Challenge that I faced over here as a foreign graduate when studying for my first exam, that was FPGEE, was to cope up with the tons and tons of clinical knowledge. I get so many questions about this one in my DM that I cannot even count. If you guys are new here, my name is Afsha and I am a foreign graduate pharmacist living here in the US, and today in this video I will be documenting everything that I faced as a hardship when I first moved to the US as a foreign graduate pharmacist. So let's dive into it. Okay, so the first one is clinical versus the industrial knowledge. So the country where I came from, where I had my initial education, was Pakistan. And in Pakistan, I believe in India as well, they do not have a very diversified role of pharmacists in the hospital and clinical setting. I mean, they do have a couple of tertiary care hospitals which are associated with like respective universities, and you do get to pass like 8 semesters of pharmacology. And I did my rounds of clinical practice in a tertiary care hospital during my 4th year of medical school. But we were a batch of about 180 some students, and most of them, I tell you, choose industrial. Why? Because that is what we get prepared for when studying pharmacy or when doing PharmD in a country like Pakistan or in India. I don't know about the rest of the world, but this is what I faced. So most of my friends went to the industrial rotation part, and I do understand why. I went for clinical setting because that was cut. I went for a clinical rotation type because that is what I wanted to do, and that is where I had my interest. But everybody is different, and challenge that I faced over here as a foreign graduate when studying for my first exam, that was FPGEE, was to cope up with the tons and tons of clinical knowledge that the native students are almost a pro at over here. Because back in my country, there were like 8 semesters of pharmacology, but there were the entire curriculum, I believe, was more focused towards the industrial side. And if you move to US and you want to be moving to states like Texas and stuff, they don't have a ton of industries over here, especially where I live in Texas, and they do not have a ton of industries. And even if they do, you need like very good contacts, and you need like 5 to 7 years of experience working as an individual in an industry to get your foot in an industry, in a pharmaceutical industry. And I also have friends who moved to the West Coast, like New York, and they have a ton of industries over there. But I tell you, face the same problem, because it's not that easy to get into industry. Yes, you do not need a license or something like that when you're moving to industry, and they do accept foreign graduates as well. But the biggest challenge the foreign graduates face who are planning to be moving to US and then getting their foot into the industrial part is getting the experience, number one, and then having really good contacts to get your foot inside the industry. The second challenge that I faced here moving to US as a foreign graduate were the laws that are linked to the pharmacy area. So they have tons and tons of laws over here. And back in the day when we used to study the drugs that are there in USB, the thing I had in my mind was the drugs that we're studying back in Pakistan are going to be the same that are being dispensed in US, but that's really not the case. So apart from the generic and brand war, because we have more generics over here, and back in Pakistan or India we have more brands, they have tons and tons of laws over here that are not taught in Pakistan, or at least weren't taught when I was in med school. For example, if a drug has DM, which is dextromethorphan, in it, there's a particular amount that can be dispensed to an individual. And if you happen to be less than 18 years of age, you need to show your driver license to make the purchase. AB ratings, and then they have different classes of drugs, like morphine is class 2, tramadol is not class 2, tramadol is class 4, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And other stuff like that. So there are different laws over here, and there's an entirely different exam for the laws. So after giving the first 2 exams, that's FPGEE and NAPLEX, you have your 3rd exam that is respective to each state. So like for Texas we have MPJE, which is a multi-state exam. But if you happen to be moving from Texas to California, let's say, you will have to take the exam over there once again, and that's not going to be MPJE, that's going to be CPJE. So because every state has different laws, And that's the point I'm trying to make over here, that you have to get accustomed to the laws over here, and that is the biggest challenge you face as a foreign graduate. Because if you happen to be working as an intern, or if you happen to be working as a technician in any university, and that's the reason I recommend you guys to start working as a technician trainee, and I have an entirely different video made on this one, which will be linked down below and somewhere over here. The basic point to make over here is, if you start working as a technician trainee before you give your exams and you start preparing for FPGEE, the most important thing that you will get a good understanding of is the laws. And the first exam tests you, they don't test you on the laws, I would say, but they test you a lot about how pharmacy is actually practiced in the US. And that is something that you need to get hands-on experience for if you're already in US. And thirdly, you need to have strong legs. And I say that because the most paid job as a pharmacist over here in the US is in community pharmacy. And I mean, there are a couple of private pharmacies here and there, but most of the US population, I would say 90%, get their prescriptions filled from the big names like Walgreens, like CVS, like Walmart and whatnot. And these pharmacies, I tell you, they're super busy, sometimes even 600 to 700 prescriptions a day. And you know what that means? That means you are on your leg 24/7. The time your shift starts to the time your shifts end. And I used to be so tired when I was working as a tech, and I mean, as a pharmacist, you do get the privilege to sit for a few minutes here and there, but as a technician or as an intern, you do not. You cannot even sit on the floor. It's super busy, and it's not considered ethical, I would say, to go ahead and sit and do your thing. You know, you have to be on your leg all the time during your shift. And I remember I was working in a private firm, in a private pharmacy, I believe 2 years back, and my head pharmacist had this chair around his desk, and he had the privilege to sit, which I didn't because I was working as a tech. So one day I asked him if he can like get the work done while sitting, and he was like, I don't want to sit. I just get to it makes me lazy if I sit down and try to do my work. So the point over here is they get so used to it that they just do not want to sit. And when this is something that I found contrary to the culture back in my home country, because that's now how things are done. Even in hospital pharmacies, I used to work for a tertiary care hospital back in Pakistan, and they did, I mean, I'm not saying this to offend anybody over here, but they did have the privilege to sit. And it was a personal preference not to sit, but they did get the privilege to sit, I would repeat. But this is something that is contrary to foreign graduate moving here to the US, because you have to be on your leg 24/7, and that is not as easy as it sounds. So these were the challenges that I initially faced when I moved as a foreign graduate pharmacist over here in the US, and I have entirely different videos made on the first exam you need to take as a foreign graduate pharmacist if you're happening to be moving to US, which will be the link somewhere over here and down in the description below. And if this video provided you any value, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and follow me on Instagram with MetNerdygram, and I'll see you guys again next time in the next video.